He looked at me across the dinner table and laughed, and in that single moment, I felt my entire identity shrink into one cruel word: unemployed. Everyone at the table heard it, and no one stopped it. My sister stared at her plate. My parents forced uncomfortable smiles, and I sat there pretending it did not hurt, but inside something cracked, because what he did not know was that the girl he mocked that night would rise in a way he could never imagine, and 6 months later the same man who laughed at me would stand in front of me asking for an opportunity while I held the power he once used to humiliate me. Her name was Madison Blake, and she was 24 years old, living in Austin, Texas, in a small one-bedroom apartment near the river where the city lights shimmered at night like distant promises. She had graduated from the University of Texas with dreams that were bigger than the safe, predictable path everyone expected her to take. She did not want to sit in a gray cubicle answering emails that meant nothing to her soul. She wanted to build something meaningful, something that carried her name, something that proved she could create value in her own way. But the journey after graduation had not been kind. Interviews ended with polite rejection emails, job applications disappeared into silence, and every time she returned home from another failed opportunity, she felt the weight of comparison pressing harder against her chest. Her older sister Brittany had followed a perfect path: stable marketing job downtown, beautiful apartment, confident, serious boyfriend named Tyler. Morgan, who worked in finance and never missed a chance to mention it. Tyler drove a black Tesla, wore tailored suits, and spoke about investments and promotions as if life were a competition. He had already won. Family dinners slowly turned into stages where Tyler performed his success and Brittany applauded, while their parents admired the stability they believed defined adulthood. And then there was Madison, sitting quietly, smiling softly, saying she was exploring opportunities. But exploring opportunities sounds different when you are 24 and your bank account is shrinking. The night everything shifted was a warm Sunday evening when their mother cooked roasted chicken, and the golden Texas sunset poured through the dining room windows, casting long shadows across the table. Conversation drifted from politics to real estate to hustle culture, and Tyler leaned back in his chair, swirling his drink as he spoke about ambition in America. He said, "In this country, anyone can succeed if they truly want it." And then his eyes landed on Madison, and he asked, "Still unemployed, though?" Words sliced through the air. She forced a smile and said she was working on something, but he did not stop. He questioned her effort. He suggested she lacked discipline. He said, "At some point you have to grow up," and the room filled with nervous laughter that felt louder than his insult. And in that moment, Madison realized the silence of those who love you can hurt more than the words of those who judge you. She drove home that night with tears blurring the Austin skyline, and once inside her small apartment, she sat on the edge of her bed, replaying every word over and over until the pain slowly transformed into something else. Not anger, not bitterness, but clarity. She opened her laptop, and instead of scrolling through job listings, she opened the notes she had been saving for months: ideas about digital branding, research about small business marketing strategies, observations about how many local shops in Austin had almost no online presence. Texas was growing rapidly. New businesses opened every week, yet many owners did not understand social media marketing, and Madison had spent countless nights teaching herself content creation, advertising, analytics, and brand storytelling simply because she was curious and believed she could turn it into something real. The next morning, she created a simple website and named it Blake Digital Growth. She designed a clean logo using free tools, wrote a mission statement about empowering local businesses, and built sample content strategies to showcase what she could offer. She had no office, no clients, and barely any savings, but she had knowledge and determination, and a burning need to prove that unemployed was only a temporary label, not a permanent identity. She walked into coffee shops, boutiques, and fitness studios, introducing herself, offering free social media audits. Most owners brushed her off, some barely looked up from their counters, but she kept going because every rejection felt lighter than the humiliation she had felt at that dinner table. One small coffee shop owner named Daniel listened when she explained how targeted content could attract university students and increase foot traffic. He admitted he could not afford an agency, and she offered to work for free for 1 month, promising measurable growth. Or she would walk away without payment. Daniel agreed, and Madison poured every ounce of her energy into that opportunity. She photographed drinks at sunrise, filmed short videos, edited captions late into the night, studied engagement metrics, ran affordable ads aimed at nearby college students, and interacted with every comment as if it were a direct conversation. Within 4 weeks, the coffee shop experienced a 30% increase in daily customers, and Daniel was stunned. He not only paid her but recommended her to 2 other business owners who were curious about the sudden online buzz. Madison suddenly had 3 paying clients, and instead of celebrating publicly, she quietly reinvested every dollar into better tools, online courses, and improved advertising strategies. Her small apartment transformed into a makeshift office with sticky notes covering the walls listing goals, revenue targets, and potential leads. While others slept, she analyzed performance data. While her sister posted glamorous dinner photos, Madison edited promotional videos and studied algorithm updates. Week after week, her confidence grew alongside her client list. By the 3rd month, she managed 8 businesses. By the 4th, she collaborated with a freelance designer, and by the 5th month, her monthly income surpassed what many entry-level corporate jobs in Austin paid. Yet she remained silent, allowing her results to mature without announcing them to the same family who once doubted her. When Brittany invited everyone to celebrate Tyler receiving a promotion at a rooftop restaurant overlooking downtown Austin, Madison considered staying home, but something inside her urged her to attend, not for revenge, but for closure. She wore a simple black dress and carried herself with calm confidence. Tyler dominated the conversation again, speaking about discipline and growth, raising a glass to toast his success, and halfway through the evening, he turned toward Madison with that familiar smirk, asking if she had found a job yet. The table grew quiet, but this time the silence felt different. Madison met his eyes steadily and replied that she had not found a job, she had built a company. He laughed dismissively, asking what kind of company, and she explained it was a digital marketing agency serving local Texas businesses, and that they now managed 12 clients and had crossed 6 figures in revenue. The words settled heavily over the table. Brittany blinked. Their parents leaned forward in disbelief, and Tyler struggled to respond as Madison calmly added that she had just signed a lease for a downtown office and was preparing to hire staff. In that moment, the power dynamic shifted, not because she humiliated him, but because she no longer needed his approval. The label Unemployed had been replaced by Entrepreneur, Founder, Leader, and as the Austin skyline shimmered behind her, she realized the true victory was not proving him wrong, but proving herself capable, and the journey that began with humiliation had transformed into a story of resilience, determination, and quiet strength. And this was only the beginning of what Madison Blake was about to become. The rooftop dinner ended with polite applause and forced smiles, but the energy around the table had completely shifted, because the girl who once sat silently absorbing criticism was now the one everyone wanted to question and understand. And as they stepped into the warm Austin night air, Madison felt something she had not felt in months, which was peace, not because she embarrassed Tyler, but because she had outgrown the version of herself that once needed validation from him. And as she drove home past the glowing skyline, she realized that proving someone wrong feels good for a moment, but building something real feels powerful for a lifetime. The next morning, her phone buzzed, nonstop texts from her mother asking why she never mentioned her success, messages from her father saying he was proud, and even a short message from Brittany that simply read, "I did not know you were doing all this." Madison stared at the screen for a long time before replying, because success had come quietly through discipline and sacrifice, and she had learned that announcing dreams too early invites opinions that can weaken fragile beginnings. She responded kindly, telling them she wanted to be certain before speaking, and then she placed her phone down and opened her laptop, because clients were waiting and campaigns needed adjustments, and growth never pauses for family drama. Blake Digital Growth was no longer an experiment. It was becoming a real agency with structure and responsibility. She signed the lease for a small office space in downtown Austin with exposed brick walls, tall windows, and enough room for a small team. The first day she walked into that empty office carrying a folding chair and her laptop, she felt a wave of disbelief because 6 months earlier she had cried on her bed questioning her worth, and now she held keys to her own company headquarters. She did not celebrate with champagne or post glamorous photos. She cleaned the floors, set up a desk, and wrote new revenue goals on the whiteboard, reminding herself that early success can disappear if discipline fades. Hiring her first employee terrified her more than starting the business, because now other people would depend on her decision. She interviewed dozens of candidates and finally chose a young graphic designer named Emily, who had recently moved to Texas with big dreams and little support. And during the interview, Emily admitted she had been rejected by multiple agencies for lack of experience, and something in her story felt familiar, so Madison hired her not just for skill, but for potential. And together, they worked long hours refining brand strategies for clients, building advertising funnels, analyzing performance metrics, and celebrating small wins like a sudden spike in engagement or a successful product launch. As revenue increased, Madison expanded services, offering website optimization, paid ad management, and influencer partnerships for local brands. Within weeks, they signed 3 new contracts, including a fast-growing fitness studio and a boutique hotel near the lake. The hotel owner was skeptical at first, but after Madison presented a detailed strategy focused on targeted travel ads and curated social storytelling, he agreed to a 3-month trial, and the results exceeded expectations. Occupancy rates increased, and the hotel began receiving inquiries from out-of-state travelers who discovered it through carefully crafted campaigns, and referrals started flowing in from business owners who once ignored her emails. Meanwhile, Tyler could not ignore her growth because Austin was a small business community and news traveled quickly. At networking events, colleagues mentioned Blake's digital growth with curiosity. Some even praised the innovative approach Madison used to help local brands scale, and for the first time, Tyler heard her name spoken with respect in professional circles that once revolved around finance and corporate status. He brushed it off publicly, but privately, he felt unsettled because the narrative he created about her being unemployed, no longer aligned with reality, and pride can make people uncomfortable when confronted with someone they underestimated. One afternoon, Brittany called asking to meet for coffee, and Madison agreed, unsure of what to expect. They sat at a quiet cafe near South Congress, and Brittany looked different, less confident, more reflective. She admitted she had laughed that night at dinner because she did not want to challenge Tyler publicly, and she apologized for not defending her sister when it mattered. Madison listened carefully because forgiveness is easier when success removes bitterness. She told Brittany that the pain had motivated her more than the apology could heal, and she explained that sometimes people project their fears onto others because they cannot imagine paths outside their own comfort zones. Brittany nodded, slowly realizing that Madison had matured beyond needing approval. Back at the office, growth accelerated. By the 5th month, they were managing over 20 clients, and Madison decided to reinvest profits into advanced analytics software and professional training sessions for her team. She hosted weekly strategy meetings, emphasizing innovation, creativity, and measurable impact because she understood that surviving in the digital marketing world required constant adaptation, and late nights returned. But this time, they felt purposeful, not desperate, and each contract signed felt like another brick placed firmly beneath her confidence. Then something unexpected happened. Tyler reached out directly, asking if they could talk privately. His message was formal, almost cautious, and Madison agreed to meet him in her office rather than at a restaurant because location reflects power dynamics, and she wanted him to see the environment she built. When he arrived, he looked around at the polished workspace, the busy team members, and the framed client testimonials on the wall, and for the first time, he seemed smaller, not in status, but in certainty. He explained that his company was restructuring and hinted at possible layoffs within his department. He said he admired her growth and asked if she would consider handling digital campaigns for a financial project he was trying to launch independently. Madison listened calmly because this was the same man who once questioned her ambition, and now he needed her expertise. She could have responded with sarcasm or reminded him of his insults, but true confidence does not seek revenge through humiliation. She discussed pricing packages, performance expectations, and contract terms in a strictly professional tone, making it clear that business decisions would be based on value, not personal history. Tyler agreed to her rates, which were significantly higher than what she once would have accepted, and as he signed the preliminary agreement, he avoided eye contact, perhaps remembering the night he mocked her across a dinner table. After he left, Madison sat quietly reflecting on how quickly life can shift when effort compounds consistently. She realized that success had changed her perspective more than it changed her circumstances, because the true transformation was internal. She no longer measured herself against her sister or compared career paths. She understood that building something meaningful requires enduring moments of doubt and criticism without surrendering vision, and as she looked around her office filled with ambition and opportunity, she felt gratitude not toward Tyler but toward the version of herself who refused to accept the label unemployed as permanent. By the end of the 6th month, Blake's digital growth crossed a revenue milestone that exceeded even her optimistic projections, and she organized a small team celebration, not extravagant, but meaningful, thanking each employee for believing in the mission and encouraging them to chase growth fearlessly, because the world often misunderstands unconventional paths. She shared her story openly for the first time, explaining how humiliation became fuel and how silence can sometimes protect fragile beginnings from destructive opinions, and her team listened, inspired not just by the numbers, but by the resilience behind them. That evening, as the sun set over Austin, painting the sky in warm shades of orange, Madison stood by her office window, realizing that the greatest victory was not watching Tyler request her services, but recognizing that she no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. Her identity was no longer shaped by family expectations or social comparisons. It was built on discipline, courage, and relentless effort, and the girl who once drove home in tears after being called unemployed had transformed into a leader capable of creating opportunities for others. And this was only the midpoint of her journey, because true success is not a 6-month revenge story, but a lifelong commitment to growth and self-belief. Success did not slow down after the 6th month. Instead, it began testing Madison in ways that felt heavier than any insult ever had, because building something is exciting, but sustaining it requires strength that most people never see. And as Blake's digital growth expanded across Austin, the responsibility on her shoulders doubled. Clients expected faster results, employees depended on stable salaries, and competition in the digital marketing space intensified every week. Yet every time doubt whispered in her mind, she remembered the dinner table, the laughter, the word unemployed, and she used that memory not as anger, but as a reminder of how far she had already traveled. The agency moved from a small startup vibe into a structured operation with scheduled strategy sessions, performance reviews, and financial planning. Madison hired a content strategist named Ryan and a data analyst named Sophia, both ambitious and eager to prove themselves, and for the first time she experienced leadership not as freedom, but as accountability, because now every mistake affected more than just her own bank account. She had to balance creativity with discipline and optimism with realism. And she spent late nights studying leadership books and watching interviews with founders who scaled companies beyond local markets, because Austin was no longer enough. She wanted Texas, then the United States. Opportunities began appearing outside her expectations. A Dallas-based restaurant chain reached out after seeing the results she achieved for local businesses, and they requested a proposal for a statewide digital campaign. Madison traveled to Dallas with a detailed presentation outlining market segmentation, ad funnels, brand storytelling, and measurable growth projections. She spoke confidently, not with arrogance, but with earned knowledge, and when the board approved a 6-month contract worth more than any deal she had signed before, she walked out of the building feeling the same adrenaline she once felt after landing her very first coffee shop client, except this time the stakes were much higher. Back in Austin, the team celebrated, but Madison understood that larger contracts meant larger pressure. Performance had to be flawless. Competitors would watch closely, and any failure could damage credibility. She implemented weekly analytics audits, encouraged transparent communication, and created a culture where mistakes were analyzed, not hidden, because she had learned that fear of failure destroys growth faster than failure itself, and slowly the agency reputation shifted from promising startup to serious